Hi everybody, welcome to our calf hutch. We've got a couple Jersey calves that we're training right now, and I think this is a great opportunity to put a video together and kind of walk you through that process and maybe just some of my thoughts on all kinds of different things. So we're going to break it up into different segments, and really kind of, it's not necessarily a tutorial for me to tell you how to do it. It's just to show you how we do it and some of my thoughts on things, and hopefully it helps you a little bit. And we'll break it up, like I said, into some chapters. And we're going to follow these guys through the whole training process from talking about when we got them, maybe some of the trouble and problems that we ran into through the very first training, the equipment that you should have or that I use to train, and then the daily routines, yoking, and all of that stuff. So thanks for watching, and hopefully you learn a little bit about how we do things here. The first topic that I want to talk about is probably one of the most controversial, and that's breeds and picking animals. I see in forums and discussions, I kind of cringe when I see someone ask this, like, what breed should I get? And there's a lot of kind of tradition, and, a lot of us have been doing this a long time and maybe have our favorite breeds, but I want to say something that might be politically incorrect. But I don't think that there's probably any breed of cattle that's untrainable. We see a lot of people have conversations around, well, Jerseys do this, or brown Swiss have this sort of demeanor. And I think as a high level, that's probably true. I mean, there's some breeds that have different aspects or attributes than others, but the thing you have to remember is that doesn't mean that they're untrainable. The other thing is that with individuals within those breeds, individual cattle could exhibit opposite sort of characteristics. So, Devons is a good example. Devons have a reputation of being extremely smart, quick-footed, intelligent, and make really good working cattle. And in my opinion, because I'm a Devon guy, that's true. That's the experience that I've had, but I've also seen Devons that aren't that smart and aren't that well trained. So what you have to remember is so much of it comes down to the teamster. A lot of times I think what happens is we give certain breeds or certain types of cattle negative connotations because we haven't necessarily trained them right or gone through the right steps. So if all you can get is Holsteins, and that's what you have near you, do it. If all you have are, is a crossbreed or a beef breed that's polled, and they probably should have horns, but that's what you have, then do it. Don't get discouraged by what you can get for animals, but use some logic behind it as well as to what you pick. Let's take a few minutes and talk about some of the things that will help you pick the breed of animal or pick the individual animals that you can get or that you want to get. To me, it comes down to asking 2 or 3 or 4 questions to yourself. The first question is size. These animals are for my 9-year-old son. I don't have a big, huge facility here or a big piece of land. I don't want a big food bill or feed bill. So that eliminates Chianinas, brown Swiss, maybe even Holsteins because they get a little bit big, some of the bigger breeds. So I'm looking at something smaller. So then the next question that we have to ask ourselves is price. So I want a small breed of animals that includes maybe Devons, Dexters, Jerseys, and a few other breeds. But I'm on a budget, and they're my son's first team. Do I really want to make a big investment and spend a couple $1,000s on Devons or spend a bunch of money on Dexters, even though maybe Dexters would be my first preference because of size? Maybe that's a decisive factor when it comes to price, and it was for us. So we ended up going with Jerseys for multiple reasons, but 2 of the reasons were they were small. I knew that they weren't going to grow too quickly for my son to keep up. And the second was price. They were really cheap, $40 a piece. So I couldn't really go wrong. It's the difference between spending $100 or $1,000 or $2,000 on calves. So that was the decision that we made. And if you ask yourself those questions, then it kind of becomes self-evident on what you can get. One of the third things that you can ask yourself too is availability. So maybe I want a small breed of cattle, and but the only thing available to me in my area are Holsteins. So I'll compromise a little bit. Holsteins are still inexpensive. They're very trainable, like we've talked about, very intelligent. And you know what? They're going to get a little bit bigger than I would want, but maybe that's the compromise that I make. Or maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum, when I start thinking about things, I want a big breed of cattle. I want something that's going to be big and be able to pull heavy loads, but I'm on a budget, so I'm not going to get Caninas, but I'll get Brown Swiss because they're readily available. If size and budget aren't a concern, and I don't mind traveling a little bit, I probably just know what I want. And if I'm the next team that I get, so I have a team of linebacks right now, the next team of calves that I personally train for myself are going to be Devons. So I'm going to spend a little bit more money. I'm going to have to wait probably a little bit longer because they're less available, but that's what I want because that's what I grew up having and that's what I like. So that's the other factor that comes into it. What do you want? What do you like? And maybe that helps you make your decision too. All right, so now let's talk about age and the best time to get animals. So we've got our breed picked. We have a farmer or someone that we're working with where we can get them. We're going to look at buying bull calves. And again, you can train. There's people on the sites that train heifers and all kinds of different things, but we're going to just kind of more or less talk the traditions in New England with training bull calves. So, in my opinion, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this, throughout the years. Yes, you can train older animals. You can train older animals that even haven't been handled that much, but it's logically speaking going to be harder. The easiest thing, especially if you're dealing with a kid who's training and who may just be smaller and not as strong, it's best to get animals that are a week or two old, right off of colostrum. Now, as with any decision in life, there's pros and cons. The pro of doing that and getting them as early as possible is that they'll be smaller, easier to handle, and they'll be more likely to create a bond with whoever's training them right away. The con is, and I've experienced this with the calves that we have, one of them we got when he was about 5 days old. The other one was about a week and a half old. Calves can go downhill pretty quickly if you're not paying attention to them, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So there's the issue of if they don't get good colostrum, if they're prone to health issues when they're young, you've got to keep an eye on that and make sure that you're working through those issues as well. But for ease of training, I am a strong believer, the earlier the better. Get them as soon as they're off the mother and off of colostrum.